The day we buried Grandpa, the sky couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Gray clouds hung low, heavy with rain, but the sun kept forcing its way through in thin, stubborn streaks. It felt like the world itself was hesitating, unsure whether to mourn or move on. I stood beside my mother, my fingers wrapped tightly around hers, listening to the soft murmur of prayers. My father stood a few steps ahead of us, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He hadn't cried, not once. And somehow, that made everything feel heavier. Grandpa had lived a simple life. He wasn't a wealthy man, at least not in the way people usually measure it. He lived in the same small house for over 50 years, fixed everything himself, and wore the same worn-out boots until the soles nearly fell apart. But to me, he was the richest person I knew. He had stories, he had patience, and he had that old wooden toolbox. The toolbox sat in the corner of his workshop like it always had, quiet, sturdy, and overlooked. It was made of dark oak, scratched and dented from decades of use. The brass hinges had dulled over time and the handle had been replaced twice. It wasn't anything special to look at, but Grandpa loved it. Every tool tells a story, he used to say, running his fingers over the worn surface. And this box holds all of mine. A kid, I'd sit on the floor while he opened it, handing me screws or nails like they were treasures. He never rushed, never raised his voice. Even when I messed things up, he'd just smile and say, "We'll fix it together." That was his way, fix it together. After the funeral, we gathered at Grandpa's house. The air inside felt different, emptier somehow, like the walls themselves knew he was gone. Dust floated in the sunlight streaming through the windows, and everything smelled faintly of wood and oil. Lawyer Mr. Henderson arrived shortly after. He was a thin man with silver hair and a calm, practiced voice. He carried a leather briefcase and spoke with the kind of quiet authority that made people listen. We sat in the living room as he began reading the will. Grandpa's possessions were simple. The house was to be sold, the money divided. Some savings, modest but respectable, would go to my mother. Few personal items were listed: his watch, his books, some old photographs. Then came the last line. "The toolbox," Mr. Henderson read, adjusting his glasses, "is to be given to my grandson." I blinked. My father let out a short, dry laugh. "Of course," he said. "Figures." I looked at him, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means," he replied, leaning back in his chair, "you got the junk." "David," my mother said quietly, a warning in her tone, but he waved her off. "Come on," he continued. "A box of rusty tools, that's what he leaves behind. That thing should have been thrown out years ago." Chest tightened. "It's not junk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad smirked. "Right, sentimental value, that's about all it's worth." Henderson cleared his throat. "Your grandfather was quite specific about this item." Dad shrugged. "Well, he can have it. Maybe he'll build himself a future with a hammer and nails." The word stung more than I expected, but I didn't argue. Instead, I stood up and walked to the workshop. The toolbox was exactly where Grandpa had left it. I ran my hand over the surface, feeling the grooves and scratches. It felt warm somehow, familiar. "I guess it's just you and me now," I murmured. Behind me I heard footsteps. "Mr. Henderson, your grandfather spoke highly of you," he said gently. I nodded. "He taught me everything," glanced at the toolbox. "May I?" I stepped aside. He knelt down, examining it carefully. His fingers traced the edges, the hinges, the corners. He didn't treat it like junk. He treated it like something important. "Interesting," he murmured. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped lightly along the bottom of the box, listening. Tap, 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 then a duller sound. He paused, tapped again, same spot, same hollow echo. He looked up at me. "Did your grandfather ever mention modifying this toolbox?" I shook my head. "Number why?" Mr. Henderson's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because," he said slowly, "this doesn't sound solid." The time my parents joined us, the air in the workshop had changed. "What's going on?" Dad asked. Mr. Henderson stood, brushing dust from his hands. "I believe," he said, "there may be a concealed compartment." Dad scoffed. "In that thing? You've got to be kidding." "Perhaps," the lawyer replied calmly. "But I would like to be certain." He turned back to the toolbox and carefully removed the contents: old wrenches, screwdrivers, nails sorted into small tins. Then he examined the base more closely. "There's a seam here," he pointed out. "Very fine, easy to miss." I leaned in. He was right. A nearly invisible line ran along the inner edge of the box. "How do you open it?" I asked. Mr. Henderson smiled faintly. "Let's find out." Took several minutes. He pressed along different sections, tested the sides, even checked the hinges again. Dad grew impatient. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "We're wasting time over nothing." Just as he said that, click, a soft, unmistakable sound. Everyone froze. Mr. Henderson's hand moved slowly to the base of the toolbox, and then he lifted it. The bottom panel rose slightly, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Silence filled the room. Dad's expression changed instantly. What is that?" Inside the compartment was a neatly wrapped bundle, old but carefully preserved. Mr. Henderson lifted it out and placed it on the workbench. "Shall we?" he asked. My hands trembled as I nodded. He unwrapped the cloth. Inside were several items: a stack of documents, a small velvet pouch, and a letter addressed to me. My heart pounded as I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. Grandpa's. I opened it carefully. "Dear boy," it began. "If you're reading this, then I suppose I'm gone, and if you found this compartment, then you listened better than most." I swallowed hard. "I know what people see when they look at this toolbox. Old wood, rusty tools, nothing special, but you and I know better. We know that value isn't always visible. That the most important things are often hidden beneath the surface." My eyes blurred with tears. "This is my last lesson to you. Inside this compartment you'll find things I've kept safe over the years. Not for their price, but for their purpose. Use them wisely, and remember, build something that lasts with love, Grandpa." My hands shook as I lowered the letter. Open the pouch, my mother whispered. I did. Inside were several old coins and a ring not flashy, but unmistakably valuable antique. Mr. Henderson examined them closely. These are quite significant, he said. Collectors would pay a great deal for pieces like these. Stepped forward, eyes wide. And the documents? He asked. Mr. Henderson picked them up, scanning the pages. His expression changed. This, he said slowly, is a property deed. To what? My father demanded. The lawyer looked up. To land, he replied. Several acres, breath caught. Where? Mr. Henderson turned the page. Just outside the city, he said. Prime location, and according to this, he paused. It's been in your grandfather's name for over 40 years. Dad stared at him. That's impossible. He never mentioned any land. Perhaps, Mr. Henderson said, because he wanted it to remain unnoticed. The room fell silent again. Dad laughed, but this time it wasn't mocking, it was nervous. Disbelieving, you're telling me, he said, that this whole time he had this. It would appear so, the lawyer replied. And he left it. Dad turned to me, his voice tightening. To him, I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The answer was obvious. The shift in my father was immediate. Where there had been dismissal, there was now attention. Where there had been mockery, there was now calculation. You know, he said, forcing a smile, we should talk about this, as a family. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time I saw something clearly. He hadn't understood Grandpa, not really. He had seen only what was on the surface, and now, faced with what was hidden beneath, he wanted to rewrite the story, but it didn't work like that. I folded the letter carefully. This was Grandpa, I said quietly. And he chose to give it to me. Dad's jaw tight. You're young, you don't understand what you're dealing with. Maybe not, I admitted. But I understand him. That stopped him. He didn't care about money, I continued. He cared about building things, about doing things the right way. I glanced at the toolbox, and he wanted me to learn that. Weeks passed, the house was sold, the paperwork was finalized, and the land, it was real, valuable, life-changing. But I didn't sell it, not immediately. Instead, I visited it, walked the boundaries, stood in the quiet, and tried to imagine what Grandpa had seen in it all those years ago. And slowly, I understood. It wasn't about the land itself. It was about what you could build on it. Months later, construction began, not a mansion, not something flashy, but something meaningful, a workshop. Place where people could come to learn, to build, to fix things just like Grandpa had taught me. On the day it opened, I placed the old toolbox on a shelf near the entrance. Not hidden, not overlooked, but visible, respected, a reminder that sometimes the things people laugh at, the things they call just old tools, are the very things that hold the greatest value. You just have to know where to look, and sometimes you have to look beneath the surface.